There's a moment when your chest tightens for no clear reason. Nothing just happened. No one said anything sharp. And still, something inside pulls back. Like a door closing without a sound, you notice it in the pause before you speak. The thought forms. It waits. Then it fades. You tell yourself it wasn't important. You let the silence take it. The room keeps breathing. No one notices. What lingers isn't the thought itself. It's the weight left behind when you don't share it. A soft pressure. A quiet ache. It didn't start suddenly. It rarely does. At first, there were words, carefully chosen, gently placed. You watched faces as you spoke, adjusted as needed. You learned early how to read the air, how to feel when a sentence landed too heavy, how to soften it next time. That skill looked like kindness. It felt like connection. But that's not the part most people notice. What they don't see is the moment after, when you replay what you said, when you measure what it stirred, when you feel the ripple move through someone else and settle inside you. It stays longer than the conversation, longer than the room. You begin to hesitate before speaking again, not out of fear, out of tiredness. It takes energy to hold words that carefully, to make sure they don't bruise, to make sure they don't pull something loose in someone else. And sometimes they still do. Someone grows quiet, someone shifts, someone says you're too intense, too much, or just looks away. You smile, you nod. You make a note inside yourself, not consciously, not with blame. Just a quiet adjustment. There's something quieter happening underneath all of this. Each time a thought meets resistance, even gentle resistance, it leaves a mark, not a wound, more like a dent. Enough dents, and the shape changes. You start choosing which thoughts deserve air, which ones can stay inside. The deeper ones wait longer. The truer ones wait the longest. You still talk. You still respond. You still listen. But something essential begins to stay hidden. That's where it starts to change. You notice the relief when a conversation stays light. Weather, plans, other people, nothing that requires translation, nothing that asks you to carry the emotional response of the room afterward. Silence starts to feel safer than explanation, not because you're closed, because you're aware. Awareness can be heavy. You sense when honesty would shift the mood, when it would pull focus, when it would invite questions you don't have energy to hold. So you pause. And the pause stretches. People might say you're private now, or calm, or distant. They don't see the activity beneath the stillness. Inside, thoughts keep forming. They don't stop. They just stop leaving. There's a strange grief in that. Not loud, not sharp. A slow dullness. Like listening to music with one ear covered. You begin to feel misunderstood in a way that's hard to explain. After all, no one is stopping you from speaking, and that's what makes it confusing. You could talk. You just don't. But that's not the part most people notice. They assume silence means you have nothing to say, or that you're comfortable. Sometimes you let them believe that. It's easier than explaining the constant internal negotiation, the weighing, the anticipating. There's also the memory of being open once, of saying something honest and watching it be reshaped, diluted, misread, not maliciously, just inaccurately. It's tiring to correct emotional misunderstandings, especially when you can already feel the effort it will take. So you let the misunderstanding sit. It feels lighter than fixing it. Over time, this becomes a pattern. You share reactions, not origins. Opinions, not the feelings beneath them. You offer agreement when what you feel is more complex. And slowly, the gap grows, not between you and others, between you and your own voice. That gap is subtle. It doesn't announce itself. You only notice it when you're alone, when there's no one to manage, no one to protect. Even then, the words don't always come. They're used to staying inside. That's when something else becomes clear. Though it takes a while to name it, the silence wasn't chosen because you didn't want connection. It formed because connection had started to feel like a responsibility. And that responsibility was always emotional. Here's the quieter truth that tends to surface only after a long time. You didn't stop sharing because you were hurt once, or because people were unkind. You stopped because you could feel too much of what your words did to others. Every reaction echoed inside you. Every shift registered. Every discomfort lingered. And after a while, the cost outweighed the relief of being known. That realization doesn't arrive with drama. It settles slowly. You notice how peaceful it feels to stay neutral, how controlled, how contained. You begin to associate restraint with safety. Not because you're afraid of judgment, because you're exhausted from impact. That's the part rarely spoken. The awareness isn't about rejection. It's about absorption. You didn't just express yourself. You carried what followed. And over time, your system learned a quieter way to survive. Holding thoughts inside became a form of rest. But rest has a cost. When too much stays unspoken, it doesn't disappear. It settles. It waits. Sometimes it shows up as distance you can't explain, or a sense that you're slightly removed from your own life. You're present, but buffered. That buffering once felt like wisdom. Now it feels like separation, not from others, from yourself. There's no sudden fix for that. No moment where everything opens again. Understanding comes first. Softly, you see that the silence was never a flaw. It was a response, a reasonable one. And with that awareness, something loosens. Not enough to spill everything out, just enough to breathe differently around your own thoughts. You may still choose quiet, you may still measure your words, but now wait. A thought stays inside. It doesn't feel like disappearance. It feels like a pause you understand. And sometimes understanding is enough to ease the weight.